We'll just wait as we wait for everyone to get into the meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to Reinvigorating Your Reader's Advisory, presented by the Adult Reading Roundtable in partnership with Rails. A recording will be available after the event. The Adult Reading Roundtable, founded in 1984, is dedicated to developing readers' advisory skills and promoting reading for pleasure through public libraries. We are led by a steering committee of Chicago area librarians, 3 of whom will be presenting today. For more information on our organization, please visit artreads.org. And now to introduce the speakers. Becca Boland is the Supervisor of Advisory Services at the Skokie Public Library. She is passionate about finding the best materials for every patron. When she is not reading a book, listening to a book, or talking about books, she's probably knitting, playing board games, or hanging out with her kids. Jez Layman is a librarian, public speaker, and job coach who has taught at over 70 libraries, colleges, and community centers. She is the Adult Teen Programming Librarian at the Elmhurst Public Library and the facilitator of the Rails 20s 30s Programmers Networking Group. She has a deep love for audiobooks and a spreadsheet for every occasion. I am Jennifer Simakopoulos, the head of adult services at the Wheaton Public Library. In addition to the Art Steering Committee, I oversee the eMedia Library Consortium. I am also dedicated to finding the right book for every reader and educating staff in all departments on readers' advisory to provide excellent service. And with that, I will turn it over to Jez.
All right, thank you. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So we are going to break this up into 4 different parts. We wanted to cover a little bit of everything so that regardless of where you are in your journey in the library providing readers advisory, you can still learn something in today's presentation. So we're going to start with training new staff. So this is helpful if you are new to readers advisory or if you oversee staff that are new. And then we're going to talk about cross-training, getting other departments involved. For those of us who've been doing it for a long time, we're going to talk about how to avoid burnout, which I feel like is a big problem right now. And then we'll talk about new ideas to recharge your readers advisory, things that you may not have done. And then we'll have a discussion afterwards. If you do have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A and we will get to those at the end during the discussion time. And we can get to the next slide. One more. Okay, so we're going to talk about, here we go. Talk about introducing staff to the services. I think the best way to learn about a new service is to use it. And this helps, not just to learn about it, but to know what the patron is experiencing on their end. So there's different ways you can do this. Have them use it as if they were a patron. They can sign up for their email newsletters. This is helpful because you also know what information is being shared with the public. So when a patron comes up to the desk and is like, I want that book that was in your email, you can pull up your email and figure out what that book was because the patron most likely does not know. So this will keep you updated. It also helps you know what's going on in other departments, which allows you to provide better whole library advisory, which we'll talk about in a little bit. You also want to provide staff with a copy of each new print newsletter. So anytime a newsletter comes out, lots of libraries still do print. If it's virtual, email it to them. But just another way to know what's going on around you. A lot of folks who work in libraries are part-time. And they're very focused on their position and don't always know what's happening elsewhere. And if you're not involved in that newsletter process or programming, it's hard to know everything. And again, the patrons are going to be receiving this and they will bring it in and it helps to know what's in there when they ask questions. I love giving tours of the library for both the public and for staff. I like to hear the different departments talk about what they're doing. I do a program every 6 months with the public where I do this, and I learn something new every time, and I work here full time. So especially for the people who are part-time or very new to the library, this is nice. You get to learn where everything is, but also learn what's happening beyond your own desk. And then challenge staff to use the library itself, use the different services. You can talk about them. It could be readers advisory, it could be ebooks, audiobooks, it could be online resources, maker spaces, all of that. So my library, Elmhurst Public Library, is using Beanstack for online challenges. And I'm hoping that some staff will try this one also. It's a kind of what your library can do. It's an introduction to the library. You can earn online badges by trying out the different services. So for example, the first one on here is an e-library badge. And all you have to do is download or stream something from one of the apps. You can use Libby, you can use Hoopla, Cloud Library. We have so many different things. And you just have to borrow it one time. And this is a good way to learn where things are on the website and to know what the library offers. And it's a good way to keep track of what staff are trying out also. And they get to keep track of their progress along the way.
Hey, Jez, is that something that the folks watching can access and try out if they were so inclined? Or do you need an Elmhurst card to access it?
No, it is open to anyone. So it's elmlib.org/beanstack.
Awesome. Oh, that's me. Hi. So beginner guides is something, we do a lot of the kind of things that Jez was talking about as well. I know for us, we definitely give folks a heads up when something has gone out, because even if they don't follow it, then they know like, oh, the new books email just went out. So if all of a sudden you're getting a ton of calls about these couple of fiction titles, why, and in terms of training new staff, we like to use, again, this is something that we've developed for the public, but we use it for internal training as well. And we call them beginner guides. I think a lot of libraries and different book resources have something comparable. And we usually aim to post, we just started this a couple of years ago. And we aim to post like a couple of them a year if we can. And we tap into, please excuse me, staff's expertise in creating these. So advisory staff will choose a genre or a format or whatever the case may be. And then they reach out to the whole staff, not just the folks in our advisory department, not or in our work group, not just the people in our department, but the entire staff, and say like, hey, are you a listener of audiobooks? If so, what do you love about them? Do you have a favorite type of audio? Do you like full cast? Do you like individual narrators? Do you like do you like graphic novels that have been made into audiobooks? What is your thing? Why do you love them? What's your favorite? What is the one that you always recommend to others? And then we compile that and create a list, but then we also write a blog post about like, what are audiobooks? What are the different types of audiobooks? Or when it comes to horror, what are the subgenres of horror? What can you expect when reading horror? And it's great for patrons who are like, everybody's talking about horror right now, but I don't know. I've always been adverse to horror. I don't know if I should read it or not. It's a great place to start, right? And for our staff who get asked, like, I'm looking for a really great manga title or whatever the case may be, they know that there's a list that was created by other folks within the library that they can reference, even if it's not their area of expertise. So like I said, it was something designed with patrons in mind, but staff makes great use of it as well. And it's on our website, so you are most welcome to share that resource, use that resource within your libraries. Don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. Please do use our content. That's why we created it. So those are our beginner guides. Some other really great resources that are great for training, especially for folks that aren't super comfortable with advisory, or maybe only comfortable reading and recommending things that they've read or they've consumed themselves. If you are not familiar with the Novelist Genre Guide, it does a lot of what we're doing with the beginner's guides, but on a larger, wider scale. It's great. We use it a lot for Westerns, for Christian fiction, for things that our staff doesn't have. We don't have anyone on staff that's an expert in those things. So we go to Novelists for that. They have 54 different genre guides. So there's a lot there. And then they've expanded that even further in partnership with Library Reads, and have created crash courses. So they're webinars that you can watch that'll take you through the basics of any genre, what to be looking for, what tropes you might find, all of that other good stuff. Novelist is a great resource. And if you're not using it in your advisory and you're not training staff outside of the folks that do advisory regularly, it's a great disservice because there's a ton of information there and people do not have to be an expert to find it and share it with the public. Library Reads, again, if you are not someone who actively participates in Library Reads, if you're like, oh, I never get to that arc in time, that's okay. Like, you don't have to vote on Library Reads to use their amazing resources. And the greatest resource that they have is they have a sortable spreadsheet of all of the past titles that have been nominated for Library Reads. And part of the requirement for Library Reads is that you have to list read-alikes. And they're working through right now the spreadsheet and making it even more user-friendly. But for now, it's a great resource. If you're looking for an author or a particular title, take a peek in there and see what kind of information is there and how you might be able to use it. During the pandemic, almost all of the publishers started doing some sort of digital book talk, book buzz, book info of some kind. I know that Penguin Random House, yes, we will make sure that the slides are available to everybody. Thank you for asking. Penguin Random House has one of their own. The Adult Library Marketing Association does one, and it's a whole mishmash of a bunch of different publishers, and they all talk about things that are coming out that are new and, you know, just like things to be aware of. Sometimes they do themes. It's a really great way if things are slow in the library or staff has off desk time to just keep in touch with what publishers are talking about and what they're pushing, because the stuff that the publishers are pushing is going to be what your patrons call and ask about, because they're going to be like, I heard about such and such or whatever. Or like, oh, I keep hearing about this book. Because if the publishers are pushing it hard, it's going to show up in print. It's going to show up on NPR. It's going to show up on all of those things. And then bookmarks, if you're not familiar and you're not signed up for their newsletter, it's really, really good. People have mixed feelings. I think it's really, really good. And I think it's really, really good for Reader's Advisory. It's part of LitHub, which is also a great resource. It talks about new books and it talks about reviews. But one of the great things that it does is it'll say, here are the 5 reviews you should read this week. So while we have plenty of staff that we can't ask to go, read every copy of Kirkus and Library Journal and everything else that might come out in any given month, we can say, like, here are 5 reviews to read. Take a peek at them when you have a moment, when you're between calls, between patrons, whatever the case may be. And they rank their review, and they rank books by the kind of reviews they're getting. So you can search a book on there and it'll tell you that there was 5 rave reviews, 2 good reviews, and 1 pan. So you kind of know what critics are saying about any given book, and it'll give you more confidence in recommending those books to your patrons. So just other great resources that can definitely be used for advisory folk, but also it can be used much wider to empower people outside of folks that do advisory every day to answer those questions that they get. I mean, it's okay if they don't want to do advisory work, but if they're into it and they have a patron that only comes and talks to them, you want to have them be empowered to have those kind of conversations if they're comfortable doing so. And part of that comfort will come with the training of making them comfort. Making them comfort? No, making them comfortable is what you're going to want to do.
Thanks, Becca.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to touch on some resources that you can get through the Adult Reading Roundtable. And first up is our popular fiction list, which is developed and updated by the steering committee. We are on the 5th edition, which was last updated in 2019. And this is designed to help library staff evaluate their knowledge of popular fiction for adults. And kind of like Becca was saying, that people can do on their own time if they have a few minutes, or if you want to make it a longer training project. So how this is laid out is for each category of fiction, there is a brief description of its characteristics and the genres and or subgenres under its umbrella, and each is then further described, listing key elements and appeal characteristics. Authors listed are representative of that category and or very popular with readers. This latest edition includes formats, and so we have graphic novels and audiobooks for the first time. And how staff can use this is they can go through the list and look at, you can see on the right, the contemporary romance authors. Next to their names, there's an RRA, etc. So they can mark if they've read this author, they've read about the author, heard about the author, or never heard about it. And so after working through this list, they may see gaps in their knowledge of certain genres, and so know where to focus their training or for their interests, where they might want to go ahead and speed read a book by this author or read reviews about something the author wrote to become familiar with that author or genre. You can also use this for in-house genre studies or staff training. If you notice, a lot of people in your department don't know much about horror. This may be something where you have everyone pick an author from one of the categories or subcategories and then discuss it and talk about the different appeals, tropes, what worked, what didn't, and how you would recommend those to people. This is available to all ART members. You get a PDF copy. But also, if your library subscribes to Novelists, this is a tool that we have sold to Novelists. So it is available through any Novelist subscription. And the link is in the slides, which, as Becca mentioned, we will be sharing after the presentation. The other art resources I wanted to mention are some ongoing continuing education opportunities. The first is our genre study. And these are, I should mention, these are available exclusively to ART members, and ART membership costs $15 a year. So really the best membership you could buy. I know I am biased, but really it's $15. You can get your library to support that. But with that comes access to both our genre study and book club studies. Now, genre study is a bi-monthly study where library staff read and discuss a specific genre or format for 1 to 2 years. We are wrapping up 2 years of narrative nonfiction. Previously, we've covered romance, speculative fiction, and more. And the great thing, and up next are audiobooks. We're doing in 2023, we're doing a 1-year study of audiobooks, and we're very excited about that format and how we will spread the love and share training ideas and readers advisory opportunities. But what I love about genre study is by participating, you get to practice book talking. And that's one of the scariest things for library staff, is how you sell a book. And so this gives you the opportunity to talk about appeal factors, any limiters, read-alikes, that type of thing, and also hear how others do it. So you have that in-person or via Zoom participation aspect of it. But if you were unable to attend a meeting, or you're interested in one of our past studies, like you don't know much about romance, you can go through the archives on our website. We have 10 years of notes that include the training opportunities that we offered. How genre study is structured is we start with art staff giving an introduction to the genre or subgenre, looking at themes and trends, that type of thing. So you get that introduction. And then you can also look at the notes to see what other people have book talked and read alike. So a wealth of information there. The next thing is our book club study, which we do quarterly. It's a book discussion and a leadership training. So the first hour, participants who are usually book club leaders at their libraries can attend as a book club participant. So you can see how other people run a book club, maybe get some new ideas or share what's worked or not worked. And you also, that second hour, are you having problems or challenges in your book club, or is something working really well and you want to share? We have different topics like best practices, managing group dynamics, how your group may have changed during the pandemic, where we'll have a discussion about a certain theme as book discussion leaders, where you can get more information. You can also bring, if you're having a specific issue, we talk about those at every meeting. So it's just a great way to crowdsource ideas from other library staff. And again, we have our full notes from these discussions and leadership topics on our website. And as a leader, a book club leader, I would like to go and see if Art had discussed the book, what questions they asked, kind of where the discussion went, to guide my questions for my group. But also, if there's something I'm struggling with or someone's asking for advice, those leadership topic notes are very helpful. So please check out our website and all of the resources that we have.
All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how to get other departments involved. I believe very strongly that Readers Advisory should not be any one person's job. It might be in your title, but lots of people can bring experience to that. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get other departments involved, even if they may not have, Readers Advisory training or may not work a reader's desk if you have that separately. There we go. So keep in mind, no one can know everything. We have all kinds of tools that we just talked about, find information, find read-alikes, different Readers Advisory resources, but sometimes your best resource is the person next to you. Everyone in the library knows something. Most of us are big readers. You don't have to be a reader to be in the library, but maybe you know a lot about video games or movies, or even just the technology available. I think that we should do whole library advisory rather than necessarily readers advisory. We'll use the terms interchangeably, of course, but it's not limited to only books. So talk to your staff. It could be in your department, hopefully throughout the library, and find out who reads a lot of romance, who reads horror or sci-fi. Generally, those genres are the ones that people read a little bit less. They're not always making it to the bestseller list. We mentioned Westerns is a big area for most librarians that we just don't know very well because we don't personally read it, but someone on your staff probably does. So if you get a particularly difficult book match request, which we'll talk about in a little bit, ask that person, say, hey, I have this reader. I think they like similar things to you. This is what they've read. What would you recommend next? Or if you're working on a bibliography or even a social media post, ask that person, what's the book that you loved most recently? Or if I were to start this genre, what would you recommend I do first? And again, this could be movies, this could be video games. You can use it in all kinds of different ways. Also invite staff to participate in staff recommendation displays. The easier the process is, the more participation you'll get. So if you have to submit a form and a review and find different copies, you're probably not going to get them. But if you just have a simple bookmark that they can write their name on and stick it in the book and put it on the shelf, you will get a lot of participation from other departments. Your part-time staff may not be always on the desk to answer these questions, but they are usually reading more than the rest of us. And they are the ones that are talking directly to patrons who may not come up to the reference desk, but they still like to check out at the circulation desk, and you see what everyone's reading, you talk to them about it. They actually have a lot of experience, even though most of the people at that desk would not say that they are readers advisory specialists, but they can do that too. So let them participate in the staff displays. The more participation you get, the more they'll feel a sense of ownership, and they'll point readers to that. They'll make sure it stays stocked so you don't have empty spaces. So it's nice to have people from throughout the whole library, especially those who don't get to interact directly with patrons. And I was saying, you have all these staff that are having great conversations but don't think of themselves as a reader's advisor. I like to say, don't think of it as promotion, think of it as a conversation. A lot of people have trouble with reader's advisory because they think of it in, capital R, capital A, reader's advisory, like it's a serious thing, you have to have your MLS. You don't. And yes, we have lots of resources to help you feel more comfortable in that, but don't worry so much about fitting a script. Just have a conversation with someone. You're probably already doing this, that if someone comes up and you're like, oh, I love this author, have you also read this book? The conversations we have at the checkout desk, conversations we have in grocery store lines or waiting for a plane. I've gotten readers advisory questions everywhere. I just have that library face. But you have these conversations regularly. So it doesn't need to be a formal reference interview. You can just talk with each other like you would your neighbors, because you're probably what you're doing already, and that's how you'll feel comfortable. And that comfort will come out. People will be more interested in reading because they see how excited you are about it. So don't worry too much about, making it fit a script.
And so what are some practical ways to get staff involved, like Jez said, without making it a burden? And many of us have an intranet or some way of sharing information with all of our staff online. And I like to just add a prompt to the staff intranet where I said, what was your favorite read of 2022? And some people I got, a title and author, some I got a great explanation that I'm actually going to turn into blog entries. So just opening that door, may get you results that you didn't anticipate. And on a similar note, even lower tech, Post-it notes. So in your break room, or we've had very good luck on the door by our staff entrance where we've posted something and then left Post-its. Right now, it's a picture and asking people to caption it. And we've got like 15 responses, I think. So do the same thing with books. What was your favorite reader? What are you reading this week? Or what's the last thing you binge watched? And just, again, that crowdsourcing and growing excitement organically. Letting them talk. So sometimes the thought of writing something and submitting it via form or email is intimidating. And so grab your laptop, go into a workroom and start a conversation and listen to what people are saying about what they've read, watched, listened to, and just type it up. You can turn it into a blog entry. You can turn it into a social media post. Obviously, you need to get buy-in from administration to do this, but this is a great way to involve staff from all departments and meet them where they are and not putting that extra burden on them. In staff training sessions, are all the staff gathered together, whether it's readers advisory or something totally different? I've left print forms on every chair that says, give me your name, what are you reading or watching, and tell me something about it if you want to. And so I got lots of new participants for our different staff advisory things from those. And sometimes I'd follow up and go chat with them afterwards if I wanted to expand on and get a little more detail that I could share with the public. But it was such a low tech, easy way to get buy-in. Obviously, doing some sort of all staff RA thing is a whole different conversation. But this is a way to get people when they're gathered together for whatever reason. At your department meetings, make it part of every meeting. Again, it's a good practice about book talking and appeals and why you like something, plus getting ideas from your coworkers on what to share with patrons. So if you could end every meeting with like 10 minutes of going around the table, something to think about. And of course, incentives. Have contests. For every entry submitted this month, you'll be eligible to win. And again, it depends on your library, what you can offer as prizes, but also asking staff like, what would incentivize them? And just to get that buy-in from that level and see how you can gather more interest and participation.
Those are all great suggestions. In terms of incentives too, if you don't have some sort of staff summer, winter, whatever reading that's separate from the programs that you're doing for the public, I highly recommend it. We had a ton of staff participation in our summer reading program this year. We hadn't had as much for the last couple of years. I wonder why. But this year it was really super great. And as the prize for staff this year, we got plain tumblers. And then our folks in the studio wrote up a little thing about how to take some of the fonts and designs from our summer reading program and put them on the tumbler that they won. So they were also learning how to use the studio and participating in summer reading. So it was like a really great synergistic kind of experience there. And now with best of lists, I don't know how many of you have our libraries that create some sort of a best of list, but please reach out to your whole staff. Don't put it all on the shoulders of designated advisory staff. That's how you get those really dynamic lists, is that you get the folks who read Westerns, you get the folks who only watch foreign films, you get the folks who might have some preferences that are beyond the scope of what your small individual department or work group might have. And then you can create these really amazing lists, and then there's totally something for everyone, right? Something we do is we call it something to chew on, because it used to be around the lunch hour, but now we do it later on in the day, because we don't want to have a bunch of folks necessarily eating together or have that be a barrier for people participating in something to chew on if they're not comfortable eating in the same room with others. And we have it for usually like an hour and a half, 2 hours once a month. We change the time of the day we do it. We change the day of the week that we do it in order to try to get as many people throughout the course of the year to participate. And all we say is come and talk about what you're reading, watching, and listening to. We talk about podcasts, we talk about music, we talk about film and TV, we talk about books, obviously. And we pay, it's on staff time. So it's something that you can drop into. You do need to get your supervisor's permission but we also have stuff worked out where people can cover desks, because it's a drop-in thing. So if you can come for 15 minutes on your break, come in, tell us what you're reading, that sort of thing. If you have some off-desk time, come and talk. If you're on desk, work with your supervisor so that you can attend. And we do have folks that are willing to cover the desk so that others can attend. And since it is something to chew on, we have been providing some snacks, which is always an incentive too. Everybody loves a good cookie. So that's a really great way. And it also has been really great in getting part-time staff who don't really interact with one another because of the limitations of their job to be in the same space and get to know each other. So in addition to all of the great advisory kind of discussions that are happening, it's also team building, right? And we always have someone that takes notes, and we have a Slack channel, and we post it on our intranet, all the notes. So if you aren't able to attend, you can still read about what your colleagues have been enjoying, and you can go talk to them about it, or just put it in your brain like, oh my gosh, everybody's watching Abbott Elementary right now. I need to watch Abbott Elementary because clearly everybody loves it a lot. And also you need to watch Abbott Elementary if you're not watching Abbott Elementary. But whatever the case is, whatever the thing is at that moment that everybody's listening to, talking about, whatever the case may be, it's going to probably come up in these discussions. And there's really great readers advisory. Now people come to something to chew on and they're like, I just heard about this book and I wanted to tell Jez about it. So Jez, please know, and the audiobook is fabulous, you know, or whatever the case may be. It's a really great way for not only sharing advisory across the library, but also engaging one another, collaborating together, team building, all of those things that you want. And it's a meeting that people actually want to go to, which is, you know, a benefit and a rarity, right? So Jennifer, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We do a lot of social media, particularly advisory wise. We are very lucky that we have the way that we're structured is there's an advisory specific work group at Skokie. So we don't do reference, we don't do info, we don't do computer help. We are just here to help people find the right materials for them, which allows us opportunities to create content for social media. And a lot of the time, the content that we create then can be made into social media posts, right? So one of the things that we do, and we're going to talk about it later, a lot of you probably do it as well, is form-based readers advisory. Once a quarter-ish, we were doing it monthly when we had more off-desk time. Now we're going to quarterly, but we reserve a whole day where the advisory staff is all keyed in to Slack, but blocks out their calendar for other meetings. And we do a mini book match. And on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, we give some sort of a prompt, like what is the last book that kept you up past your bedtime? And then we recommend 3 books-ish. We try to keep it to 3 books that we think people might like. If you go to our Skokie Public Library Instagram page, you can see all of the mini matches we've done previously and kind of get a sense for how we do it. And we try to write descriptions that can be within one Twitter response. So we try to keep it to 1 or 2 sentences as to why we think people will like it. And so all of that happens online. We also do a live book discussion once a month. On Instagram, we have both a Readers Advisory Instagram account and a Skokie Instagram account so that we can have 2 people talking and none of us have to use our personal account. And we kind of cross-post a lot of the advisory stuff to the advisory Instagram as well. We put up pictures of the stuff that we're doing throughout the library. We link to lists, all of that other stuff. You know, take the content that you're creating or even those discussions that you're having with your staff and move them to social media so that more people have access to them. We have a whole Reels team now that comes up with ideas for Reels. And so we create those as well. And we're taking some of our advisory work that we've done previously and just making them into Reels. Or we have a prompt every month that's like, what would you read around the campfire? And then we all come up with that and then it's pushed to social media. So train folks to keep an eye on social media because it will give them a really good sense of what the library is pushing out and probably why. And also, it's a great way to go back and look through advisory stuff that folks have already done. And again, going back to what we discussed in the earlier on in the discussion, when you get that call, that's like, what about those campfire books? And they're like, campfire books, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, it was something they posted on social media. We have a list. Then we can say, like, would you like the list sent to you? Is there a particular book that caught your eye? What can we tell you more about it? So, you know, making sure that your social media has advisory content, not just programming content, not just community news content, that it has all of the advisory content as well. If you are not recommending books at your service points, you should be. It's a great way to start conversations with your patrons. It's a great way to, you know, get folks talking about books, seeing books, especially stuff that they may not have heard of or may not have missed whatever, or like a theme that they're really into. And we do it with books, film and TV, and music. So everything you can put up here. There's no rules about what you can recommend on any given day. We have 3 bookmarks. One reads I recommend, one reads staff pick, and one reads discussion pick. Generally speaking, the discussion pick one is like for an upcoming discussion, but we also sometimes put it in books that we've discussed previously. So we can say like, oh, like this is the kind of thing we talk about in Pages Through History. If it's interesting to you, maybe look into attending that. Let's see, my staff and I like to theme our stuff at the desk. So the one on the left is Women Are Monsters, and the one on the right is I Kissed a Ghost and I Liked It. And so, and like, we don't often share what they are. We do with each other, but not with the public. If they ask, we absolutely will, but it's just something we do for us. I feel like when Red came out, all of the books at the advisory desk for a couple days were all red. Like the color. And so it can be as easy as that, or it can be as complicated as just some silly thing that you're doing. And it doesn't have to just be at the advisory desk. It can be at all the desks. And that's something I'm working on. So I'm hoping that that's gonna, and we've done also like ask me what I'm reading. At my previous library at ELA, we had pins that said ask me what I'm reading, and like display stands where we could put a book and say ask me what I'm reading. So different things work for different libraries depending on what your service points look like. But you know that feeling when someone's like, what have you been reading lately that you've really loved? And like the chalkboard of your mind just gets completely wiped clean. If you have a prop in front of you, even if it's not something you've read recently, you could be like, oh my gosh, have you read The Regrets? I don't think a lot of people have heard about it, but it's really a bananas book, and I feel like more people should read it. And about a woman and a ghost who fall in love. And yeah, so like having that there helps those kind of times, especially because those of us who do advisory all the time, like in theory, if someone said to us, what are you reading right now? What are you loving right now? We should be able to answer that fast, right? But sometimes our brains just have a lot going on. And so we don't. So having a prop there is helpful, and think how helpful that would be to staff that aren't used to talking about materials all the time, that if they have something in front of them, they could say like, oh, this thing is great. So there, soapbox done. Myself and the supervisor, the collection development supervisor, collaborate every month on, I actually sent it to her right before this webinar for November, because we have to wait until the big 4 book club people announce their book clubs, because those are ones we get questions about anytime, and we consider that Good Morning America, Reese, Read with Jenna, and Oprah, because those are the ones we get asked about the most. So we make a notables titles thing that we send out just to desk staff. And it's not for the public, it's not for public consumption. It has links to the titles in the catalog. And it's just like, these are books that people might ask you about this month. This is something that's being hyped a lot. This is something that there's a lot of buzz around. Let's say, I don't know, Michelle Obama has a new book coming out this month. Like, our assumption as book people is that everybody knows that Michelle Obama has a book coming out, but not everybody does. And so like creating something like this, that's just a list, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It can just be an email. Do what you have the time and the ability to do, but having those books ready and at hand for your staff, going back to those discussions about the emails and all of that other stuff, is really, really helpful. Give people all of the tools that you can, and then they can use them however works best for them. So that's notables.
Right, so now we're going to talk about avoiding burnouts, especially coming out of the pandemic. I think a lot of us are very tired and maybe overworked, and we've been working so hard dealing with all the changes that coming up with something new or regularly doing something that involves a lot of work is exhausting. So we have some tips here to avoid burnout for both new people and people who've been doing this for a very long time. The first thing is, don't overdo it. Set limits for yourself and for your staff. I find that this is really helpful with new staff because they come in with lots of energy and they're very excited. And it's like, set a guideline for them so that they're not doing a lot and then assuming that they have to keep up that level. Because when you start to get trained on more things and you take on more responsibilities, you can't do 100% of things that you were doing. So it's nice to set guidelines. And again, you can spread this out across different staff. It should not be one person's job. And then ask yourself or your staff person, does everything need to be a bibliography or display? Like, yeah, it's hot right now, but how long is that going to last? Is it going to be the week? Do we have enough items to put out there? If you have the ability to be flexible with that, when a famous author dies, you put up a display, and when items are gone, take down the display. Not everyone has the ability to do that, and it depends on your staff and your systems and how many people will this benefit. Like, yeah, you are interested or it's in the news, but is there a big enough audience for this to make up for the staff time that you're going to be spending on it, when you could be using that space for something else, or you could be using your time for something else? We also, a lot of people feel like they have to provide as many read-alikes as possible because, well, what if they've read these already? Having too many titles makes it incredibly difficult to browse. The more you have, the harder it is to read and the harder it is to pick something. And I just did a craft class and I gave them 5 different colors, and a couple of people were just frozen because they have to pick something. So you don't want to have too much. If someone has read all 15 books, they will come to you and they'll probably say like, hey, do you have any additional titles for us? Or I loved this list that you set out, but can you recommend something else? And then again, that will make it easier to manage on your website. It will make it easier to manage for the public if you're putting out posters, bookmarks, flyers, anything like that. Give yourself a limit for that. And then you don't need to keep everything forever. Just like we feel like we have to create everything, a lot of places feel like we have to keep everything. And yeah, it might be digital, so it's not taking up physical space on your desk, but it's probably taking up space on your website. The more things you have, the harder it is to find something. So if you have a list of all of your bibliographies, you want to make it easier to find what people are still interested in. So maybe something is out of date. Maybe there's just not as much interest, or you don't have a lot of those titles anymore. You do have to go through your bibliographies periodically and check the titles, maybe update it with a couple of new things, take out anything that's not popular anymore, or maybe got weeded because it wasn't popular. And you can update those, but do everything on a cycle. I used to be in charge of the library's bibliographies. We had about 300 of them, and I had a major spreadsheet because I love spreadsheets. And we would update everything on generally a 2-year cycle. Some things were less because it was, book club picks of 2022. That would be an annual thing. But when it came time to update that, before I would give it to a staff member, I would go in, see how many times we printed bookmarks for this. Do they seem to be moving? How many hits do we get on the website? How many of these links still work to the catalog? And decide, is this one that's worth our time? Or do we take it off the website? You can retire things. Just because you made it doesn't mean it needs to stay forever. And you can still keep it on your intranet or your shared drive so that if you do get a question at some point, staff still have the ability to do that. But you don't need to, keep doing everything, because if you update everything, you're just exponentially increasing your workload every time you make something new. So don't worry about that. It's okay to get rid of old lists. Save lists, posters, bookmarks to reuse in the future, especially holiday things. I would make a holiday cookbooks display, and I had holiday music and books, and I saved those posters and I put up the same poster every year. Because especially if they don't have titles on them, why print it again? Why recreate something every year? And if we had a book list to go with it, I would keep that too, because again, we might not have everything or it might not be on shelf, but it's a really good starting point. You don't need to start from scratch for everything. Just don't reinvent the wheel. It's okay to find things online. You don't need to come with every list completely from your brain. We are librarians. We have resources available. We just talked about a whole bunch of them. When it comes time to look up a list of read-alikes, I start with a Google search usually. It's, what does Novelist say? What does Book Browse say? What does, Book Riot say? What does Twitter think? There's lots of options there. You don't need to create everything from scratch. And especially if you're doing things for social media, go ahead and share that link. You don't need to have everything be the libraries to be able to share it. Okay. And then get the most out of what you're doing. We don't need to do everything separately. If you create one book list of, could be different themes, maybe it's our favorite romance reads, or like I said, the best books of 2022. You can use it in so many different ways. This is not even a complete list, but we've got social media, got a curated list on Overdrive, print and bookmarks, posters, e-newsletters, digital screens, virtual displays, a page on your website of all the bibliographies, a physical display, shelf talkers. You can do so many things with the same list. And maybe you don't do all of them because it's a lot and you don't want to have only one topic presented everywhere, but you don't need to create something brand new every time. So if you're putting in the time to create a bibliography or even just a couple of picks, use it elsewhere. Reviews are the same way. We would have reviews on our blog, and then I would edit them down to a couple sentences and put it on digital screen so that when patrons are walking around, they see the book cover, they see a short blurb. They don't have enough time to stand there and read the whole thing, but they can get a sense for it. And then I could make those into shelf talkers also, especially for something very popular. Maybe, there's something that's really hot and you can't find it on shelf, but where that item would be, you could have a shelf talker for a read-alike. So you can do lots of different things. And especially if you have something like LibraryAware or Canva, it makes it really easy to use that same content in different formats so that you're not all doing things separately. It does require you to communicate with each other so that not everyone is making the same list. That was something that when I was managing the bibliographies, I would have people talk to me about their topic before they went and made a whole list, because occasionally we would get two people who would do the same thing. And if they didn't tell me ahead of time, they're both doing unnecessary work and we don't need to do that. So you can have systems in place. You don't even have to be the person to make these, depends on how your library is set up. I currently work in a marketing department. So maybe someone in a different department would create something like this and they could send us the titles and we'll get it into our e-newsletters. We'll get it on our social media. We'll make a poster for you. Whatever you need, we can make happen. Yeah. And then I mentioned this briefly earlier. I like to think of it as whole library advisory. advisory services go beyond just books. We use readers advisory a lot, but that could be technology, could be services, programs, movies, video games, music, streaming services. Nothing exists in a vacuum. You can promote things that you don't oversee too, things outside of your department. That's why it helps to be aware of what the public is getting and what's going on in other departments. So it shouldn't be one person's job. It should be part of everyone's job. And you can do this through cross promotion. So you can have materials displayed at a program if it's a similar topic, or if you have a display, you can mention an upcoming program because there's usually a tie between them, and someone who is interested in this kind of book would be interested in this kind of program. Maybe there's another service that they would like. My craft classes are in extremely high demand right now. So we're promoting Creative Bug. We're promoting our craft books because we cannot meet the full demand. We're doing the best we can, but clearly there's a lot of interest. So what are other ways we can meet that? We try to share as much as we can. And you can promote things outside of your department. Keep in mind, parents are grown-ups too. Like, even if they don't get to spend a lot of time in the adult department because they come in with their kids, you can still talk to them about things other than their kids. So you can have a couple of maybe adult bestsellers on display in the children's area, especially near like a play area where the parents are probably, sitting in their chair and the kids are, playing in some kind of play place. Have those available so that they don't have to go out of their way to get them, especially if your child is really little. It is very hard to go browse something. So keep that in mind, but also if it's a similar topic, you can promote children's programs at adult programs because they might have children or grandchildren or just know somebody who could benefit from this service. And you never really know exactly what someone wants. So don't look at things as, paint everything with one brush. Think about who is the person in front of me and what are they interested in? What do I think that they would enjoy? The same way you would with books. So it helps to do this. You can get people from all departments doing this, and it takes a little bit of load off of, the one person. So it should be part of everyone's job that, promotion doesn't have to be only from the marketing department. That's still me. Make the public do some work. I know that sounds crazy, but they're very eager to talk about what they like. There's lots of different ways we can do this. My library, Elmhurst, has a program called Trading Titles. So we have it in place of a book discussion. We're doing ours in December right now because people are too busy to read a full book. So they can come and it's just, tell us what you've read recently. What did you enjoy? What did you really love this year? And it might be books they read for a book discussion, might be things that they read on their own. Occasionally, we've had a couple of authors show up and try to talk about their own books, and that's fine. They're residents too. But you can sit down and, they make recommendations to each other. And if you pay attention, you can keep a list, and then you can send out that bibliography after the program. You can send it to people who attended. You could also share it on your website saying, people in our town love these books. And especially if you can get just like a couple of words from them about why they love the book, they've written a review for you, essentially. It's done. There's also recently returned shelves. You don't really have to do a lot of work for that even. People love to read what other people are reading. At Elmhurst, we don't have space for a separate recently returned shelf that people can browse. So we have a cart. Like, it doesn't have to be big and intense. You can just have a small cart and people browse this because they're interested in, what are my neighbors reading? Like, should I be reading this also? And we have the same thing. I don't have a picture of it here, but every year in December, I do a display of the most checked out books from the year. So the circulation staff runs some stats for me, and I put up the 25 most checked out items, and people love it. They want to take home lists of it. They want to find it online because, you know, they don't want to be left out of the conversation. If there's something really cool, like they don't want to be left behind. So, you know, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. It's been very popular. And then we get more checkouts for those books because people want to read them. So in that case, I'm putting together a display, I'm running a report, but I don't have to create anything from scratch because the public has already done it for me. And similar with that, there's different ways that the public can submit reviews. So my library uses Beanstack. We're very new to it. So with our summer reading, we would ask them to write a short review when they submitted it as a way to like check off how many books they've read. And sometimes it could be a long review. Sometimes something like this, you know, this book is cliched, of course, but Horowitz definitely nails Fleming's compelling style, real world detail, credible escapades, and outsized villains to create a worthy addition to the Bond oeuvre. That tells me everything I need to know. Is this a good Bond book or not? And, you know, Joel just submitted that as part of his reader's advisory, you know, thing for his summer reading. And sometimes it's as simple as, you know, they put, you know, up to 5 different star emojis, and that's their whole review, but it still lets us know, did they enjoy this? Did they not? Generally, we get even more when they don't enjoy something, which I love. You know, tell me why you didn't like this. You know, they're very happy to talk about what they didn't want. And then we do what is called a reading adventure, which I've got on the next slide. So in every newsletter, we have a reading adventure that's tied into our program theme. So we just ask that you read a book about the topic. Our fall theme is music. So read a book about music or musicians. And we have a list of titles that you can choose from if you're not sure what you want to read. And then when you've read the book, you just submit a short review. And then you can use those reviews the same as we did with Beanstack. And like I was talking earlier about using things in displays or digital screens, you know, I could make a digital slide that, you know, has a picture of, you know, the Horowitz book and, you know, that short review. And I could, you know, say something about like, Joel read this or a patron did this. Like, it's not just the librarian saying it's great, like your neighbors saying it's great. And you're more likely to read it that way. So we have this small challenge every quarter. It doesn't take too much, but it gets people interested in our theme and it gets them interacting with us and doing a little bit of work for us.
So we had started to do this in early 2020, and then it had to be put on hold for a little bit, but we are doing advisory pop-ups. So we roll one of our dancing walls out, but which we just use the dry erase part of it. So you can do that too, but it would also work with Post-its or whatever you have on hand, those big Post-its where you write on them, whatever you have. And ask people questions and use it to start conversations around advisory. So on Halloween, we asked people what their favorite scary book and movie is. And it led to a lot of really interesting conversation. One person was like, I don't read scary books or watch scary movies, but then they said The Wizard of Oz terrified them as a child because of the flying monkeys. So there was still that interaction there, even though they didn't actively read or watch what we were asking for. We're also going to do this and bring out just a stack of books and films and TV shows that go along with the theme or that we're just trying to promote, that we can kind of do quick, you know, 1 minute or less book talks for and try to hand them out to folks. It's quick and it's easy. We also have a dry erase board in our staff spaces. So we do, our social committee does similar things where they put up like, what's your favorite part of fall or whatever the case may be, kind of going back to what Jennifer was talking about earlier in terms of getting staff's feedback on stuff. And if every once in a while you want to say like, what's your favorite winter film, or like what what do you like to, do you read seasonally, or whatever the case may be. You can kind of get staff talking about that and thinking about that.
Well, I think that could be the reason I don't like scary stuff either, because the Wizard of Oz monkeys terrified me as a child too. So we're going to say that's why I don't like scary things. But we're moving on to our last section of the program, Recharge Your RA. And so we've talked a lot about services and programs, and we're going to continue talking about it and involving those ideas we've talked about thus far. Everything we're discussing today is so interrelated. And so Becca briefly mentioned earlier, book match services. So I'm going to do a deeper dive into those right now. The more you do book matches, the more comfortable you feel helping patrons in person. There's a lot of, so book matches are personalized recommendations for patrons. And there are a lot of form options out there. If you don't have an existing form, I've given you 5 examples here. Tailor one that suits your needs. And if the one you currently have isn't netting a lot of interaction or results, maybe you want to take a look and shorten it or tweak it a little bit or do some promotion. We have seen great success in promoting it in our library-wide e-news. We typically get 2 to 5 interested folks after they read about it in the monthly e-news. That's actually been our biggest driver of the form base since we started it about 6 months ago here at Wheaton. You can also create a bookmark with a QR code to have in certain books. You can put them in all the books on the hold shelf. You can put them near displays, or for those who are more comfortable filling out a form, just print. We made a half sheet print version of our form. And so, getting people where they are, and also training staff at all service desks to mention this form based on, those relevant conversations. So it's not that they need to be able to answer the whole book match by themselves, but that they can tell people about it. And like, hey, did you know, you mentioned liking these books and wanting some new ideas. Did you know we offered this service? So again, that what Jez was talking about, that whole library promotion, that everyone plays a role. And so after people fill out the form, what happens? So currently at Wheaton, we assign it to an individual and they come up with the list of books and respond. Skokie answers collaboratively with staff from multiple departments. And after hearing Becca talk about that, I'm rethinking some of our practices. So it's why it's great to hear from other people and get ideas. But in responding to our form, we use Library where we created a separate newsletter specifically for book match. And I've got a couple examples for you as well. And depending on what they asked for or how we're framing the response, we may include not only the auto-generated description of the book, but kind of why we're recommending it. So Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie is good for fans of Louise Penny. Apparently this person was also interested in an atmospheric, compelling mystery. And that's why we included the Kelly Garrett book. And so tailoring those has generated some great feedback for us. And
Jennifer, just a minute
yeah.
to, we work on them collaboratively, but we have one person that manages and sends them out. So we do put everybody's name on their individual recommendations, which is really helpful for people to read one another's recommendations, because then when they're on the floor and they get asked for those titles, then they have other read-alikes in their head. But the other thing we do is before we send it out, we do a quick audit of it to make sure that, and that's not something we've talked about a ton in this presentation so far, but something to be aware of when you're talking displays, when you're talking lists, when you're talking about all of those things, is to be mindful of the voices that you're sharing and making sure that you're not, that there are a wide variety of voices and experiences that are being shared within these recommendations, be it lists, be it social media posts, be it book matches. And that's something that's really important to us. And that's another reason why we collaborate, because it allows us to have more people from more diverse experiences all contributing to book matches to really round out the recommendations we're making. Excuse me for my interruption.
No, thank you for bringing that up, Becca, because it was one of those things that's been in the back of my mind, but you're right, we didn't actually say it. So yes, whenever we're making book lists, recommendations, we do, like you said, we have various staff do it, but then someone does do a diversity audit before we send it out to make sure we have representation. And all of our book lists, all of our displays are inclusive, and we work to make sure that we have a wide variety of voices represented. So that's just something good practice for all of your RA everything, just to keep in the back of your head it's like keep in the back of your head, but also to be deliberate so the other thing I wanted to mention was going back to getting more staff buy-in. So one of my favorite training tools are reader profiles. And this is a great way to think about appeals and why you like what you like before applying those skills to help others. So to best serve readers, first understand what you like and why. And it's a great tool for whether a novice or a seasoned staff member. It helps enhance RA conversations to think about what you enjoy. Did you like The Martian because of the hard science, or did the adventure draw you? Readers are drawn to different aspects of books, and this is an exercise to help us think of various possibilities. So when crafting a profile, think about the themes, the appeals, the genres that are most important to you and why. Check out Novelist Story Elements Index for an in-depth look at those things. Include anything that you avoid, things that irritate you. Mine is ambiguous endings. Why you're currently in the mood, what you're currently in the mood to read, and if that has changed. And by putting this together, along with sharing 3 books you liked and why, and 3 books you disliked and why, this is the first part of the training exercise by crafting your profile, and then sharing it with colleagues to say, you know, this surprised me about myself, or I learned this, or I hadn't really thought about this before. And the second part is treating those
Sorry, can I
profiles.
interrupt you real quick?
Oh,
Jen.
Your mic is coming in and out. If you can.
Oh, I'm
get
sorry.
Closer to it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Should I go back at all?
Keep going. You're good.
So to trade profiles and to make suggestions for your colleagues based on their interests. So it's that double, it's that 2-part readers advisory and training exercise. And this also leads to, as both Jez and Becca mentioned earlier, finding out who knows what by creating a spreadsheet of staff interests and comfort levels. So list out each genre or category in fiction and nonfiction, and ask staff to rate how comfortable they are in choosing books in each genre. So this is a great way to find experts in other departments. It may also guide future training ideas if you don't have anyone who's comfortable recommending horror or talking about horror. Now, all of us as readers, advisory professionals can recommend a book about in a genre that we don't read a lot of, or can recommend a book we haven't read. But if you're looking to kind of grow that expertise in a specific area that there seems to be less comfort in, this may be a way to do it. And lastly, crowdsourcing, like Becca mentioned earlier, encourages teamwork. Getting different suggestions from various staff is a good thing to offer a wide variety of perspectives. So you can take these book match services and apply to social media. So we do this quarterly on Facebook, where we ask people to give us 3 books, and we recommend something they might like to try. We've got 2 staff on call, and it's fun to have a partner to bounce ideas off of. There's still that element of responding in a timely manner, but a little less intense than that in-person interaction. And it's also a great way, like Jez said, to let your patrons do some work. By having it out for the public, we've got people who will say, oh, I like those books too. And someone will say, oh, I'm not from the library, but have you tried this? And so it's just another way to get patron buy-in. You can also, I'm sorry, my audio is very choppy.
Yeah, we're still having a lot of trouble with your audio, Jennifer.
Okay.
Would you mind if I just read?
No,
some
go ahead.
Okay, so looking at the book match services, a couple of things that Jennifer has helpfully written in her notes here is that the New York Public Library has a separate Twitter handle specifically for their recommendations. You don't need to do something like that, but you can have some kind of staff offering, doing personal recommendations. You could be once a week. Sometimes, in the past, we've done some where we announce it ahead of time. Sometimes we just put up a message and say, hey, we're going to be here for the next hour. Who's interested? Like, tell us a book that you just read or tell us what you're looking for. You can do kind of more informal book matches that way. So Becca spoke about Skokie's book match service a little bit, and figure out what kind of platform works best for your community and for your staff. I keep quoting Eliza Schlesinger by saying, I rely on much braver 30-somethings to go on TikTok for me and post the content on Instagram, because I just don't have TikTok. I've decided not to take the new trends at this point. But that may work really well for some of your staff, or maybe they don't know one or another, or, see what works. At the beginning, you can try putting out the same content on all of the platforms. Again, don't reinvent the wheel, and see where you're getting the most interaction. I find that Facebook gets a lot of interaction. I think because the people most using it have a little bit more time. They're also really dedicated to the library. Like, they want to interact with us. Whereas other places, they might see it and think that's great and move on. They've still seen it. They'll think about it. They're not interacting as much, but they know that they have that option. So it could be a post, it could be a reel, it could be a story. There's lots of different ways that you can still make this available, even for people who don't want to take the time and fill out a full form.
So this is really quick and easy. I'm gonna fly through this pretty quick because we're coming up on our time here. So we have found that shelf talkers, especially in our library where we have a fair amount of turnover in our stacks, don't work physically, but they work great digitally. Libby just introduced shelf talkers that you can add to books in Libby Overdrive. And we are taking content that we've already created and adding those. And it can be kind of anything. So you'll see here, the Hacienda has now a shelf talker in Libby Overdrive. So this isn't a great example because we tried it for the first time with the Hacienda because it was our adult reading discussion for September. So we wanted to see how the shelf talkers worked. And so we put something really quick in there. What we're doing normally is that the shelf talkers that are going into Libby are the same copy is going into our catalog as an unrated review. So we're not using stars, we're not using anything, but you'll see that the first thing that comes up after critical reviews is from my library staff. And so we're just putting the same kind of shelf talker that we are putting in Libby Overdrive into our catalog as well, so that people can see the same information there, since our most hit place in terms of digital material content is our catalog. And just again, really quickly, to add to social media content, display content, list contents, Novelist is a great tool. They have a page to screen list that they update throughout the year that has everything that is a book that's being made into TV or streaming or a film. And people ask about that all the time. It's a quick, easy way to access that. It's right there under quick links through Novelist. And then also Novelist, if you'd go to the next slide, please, has media mentions. And so we were talking earlier about folks who are like, I heard about such and such on NPR. You can go into Novelist and look at media mentions. They have a media, if you search in the keywords for media mentions, this media mentions what's included will come up. And at the top, you can just click on NPR and sort it by newest, and it'll tell you the books in November that NPR has discussed, which is super duper helpful and really a quick and easy way to get the patrons what they need. Or if they're like, hey, I just read this book that I heard about on NPR in November. I don't really remember what it's called. It's about whatever. It's a podcaster and it's about her family and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I really liked it and I want to read something like that. Then you can figure out what book it is and have recommendations there built in for you. So that's super duper helpful.
Right, and then different ways to keep up with the trends. You know, we can't all know everything. There are a couple of resources here. We've got Book Riot and LJ Book Pulse. Book Riot has a librarian-specific newsletter that shares news and book lists, and they have a lot of different things to choose from. So you can get your daily book news, you can get it on genres.
And in that newsletter, there's a section that says what your patrons are hearing about or something to that effect, which is always super helpful.
Yeah, so what people are coming in to ask about, you know, all of that. On Mondays, you can do like the big books of the week. So kind of looking forward, like what's going to come out tomorrow on Tuesday. And then Thursdays, we get the new bestseller list. And Fridays, that's when all the movies come out. So is there a new movie that was based on a book? Because all of them are. And you can promote that as well. So those are from Book Pulse, looks like. And then, yeah, next one here. So Book Talk, we've mentioned briefly, it's TikTok. I rely on Instagram for it, but it's huge. It's a whole world to itself. It's a community on TikTok that has readers, book reviewers, authors, publishers, and librarians. There's videos about books, reading, writing. You can see the holds build very quickly, particularly on the digital resources. So more than your print copies. Makes it pretty easy to access those when you're already on your phone watching things. And it definitely appeals to a younger audience as well, which we know are gravitating more towards the digital, but some of them love their print books also. And then there's different ways that you can take advantage of that. So in Overdrive Marketplace, they have must-have books on the side of your homepage, and there's a link to trending on Book Talk. So they can do the work for you, so you don't have to wander into TikTok if you're old and afraid like me. You can also create displays with trending titles, or more likely, if they're all checked out, you can create read-alike lists. So, you know, when Jeanette McCurdy's book came out and everyone needed to have it, there's still ridiculously long wait lists for that. I'm just waiting it out. When that came out, we didn't have copies to give them, but we could say, while you're on the wait list, try these other books. If it's similar, you know, see if you like that while you're waiting. And then there are libraries on TikTok, lots of great ones. We've got some links here to Wheaton and Brooklyn. I would shout out Batavia also. They have 2 people on staff that are just fantastic at it. And it's an opportunity to expand your reach, especially to a younger audience. Again, you already did the work, you have these lists. It's just another way to reach people where they already are without relying on them to come to us and specifically ask for that kind of content. So thank you for listening to us. I always say that my goal with every presentation is everyone leaves learning at least one new thing. So I hope you have at least one, hopefully much more than that. And we can open up to discussion now. So if you have questions, if you have other suggestions you want to share, maybe issues that you're having, we can try to weigh in on. You can send those into the Q&A and we will answer those. And while you're thinking about that, you can take a look at this. Here are all the places to find us. Check out the Adult Reading Roundtable's website at artreads.org. It's not just art.org. I learned that earlier. That's for radiation techs. We also have a mailing list that you can sign up for and get the latest information on presentations like this, on the genre studies, the book club studies, everything that we do. If you are not a member, please check out the website. Like we said earlier, it's only $15. Like that is the cheapest thing you can get anywhere for professional development. You will have no problem getting admin on board for that one. And then you can find all of us on libraries. We've got our emails here. I also have my personal website, my Instagram, come find me online. So we've got a question here. How often do neighboring libraries share displays, bibliographies, or the monthly reading prompt? I think it would be cool to also share and promote what our neighbor libraries are doing and sharing the workload of RA2. That was something I really enjoyed when I ran my last library's Twitter account. Is again, you don't need to create everything yourself, just as you can share from, library journal, book riot, things like that. Share from other libraries. It's a good way to create community, especially here in the Chicagoland area. We are all so close to each other, and patrons tell us very honestly they cheat on us. It's okay. Especially if you are within one of the bigger systems and you can use your card elsewhere. Yeah, I think it would be great to share those things. You can always add things if you want to do like a quote tweet and add something to it, or maybe respond to it. I think it's fun to have like a back and forth with different libraries. When I worked at the Indian Prairie Library in Darien, we had some pretty good interactions with the Darien Library in Connecticut because people mistook them for us all the time. So we had a nice Twitter relationship and we would share things with each other. And I think that would be great to do with local libraries because you don't need to reinvent the wheel, and libraries share. We're here to promote everyone else too.
I think that's our time, right?
We do have more time actually.
Oh,
if
we
need
do?
it, if there are questions.
How long do we have, Jess?
And we could go until 4. We used to do 2-hour programs.
Okay.
We don't do them quite as often anymore because we're virtual and we're all busy. And that was our networking time. But if you do have a question, you can send them to us. You can contact Art Reads. You can contact each of us individually. There is a recording of this, so you'll get this information later. And we will put up the slides, I believe, on the Art website. So thank you all for joining us and have a great afternoon.
And feel free to reach out individually to us or us as a group if you have any questions that come up later. And we're happy to share them and discuss amongst ourselves and also bring them back to Art if we need even more input. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.